Part 30. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 291. Chu Qing Huang wanted to know what he was planning to do, so she kept pretending to be asleep and quietly squinted her eyes. After a while, Fu Kang raised his eyes and glanced at her, his thin lips pursed slightly, with a slight nervousness on his face. Seeing that Chu Qing Huang was not awake, he breathed a sigh of relief, and quickly lowered his eyes to continue his actions. Fortunately, Chu Qing Huang has a cool and self-controlled temperament, otherwise the secret would have been exposed by now. As a result, Chu Qing Huang became more and more certain that Fu Kang must be pretending to be stupid and deceiving herself into thinking that she was asleep. But what was he doing with her hair? I saw Fu Kang holding her hair with one hand, and taking a lock of his own hair with the other hand. After smoothing them out, they put them together and looked at them. Then he flexibly tied their hair together with both hands, and gently tie a knot. Chu Qing Huang looked at his actions and couldn't help but want to raise her eyebrows. The hair was too smooth and would fall apart automatically after being tied, so Fu Kang held it with his hands and stared at the knotted hair for a moment, his eyebrows quietly softening. After a moment, he gently put the knotted hair to his lips and kissed it, as if he was kissing his most beloved thing. Chu Qing Huang frowned slightly, watching his actions calmly, and then saw Fu Kang carefully loosening the hair of the two of them, restoring Chu Qing Huang's hair to its original position, and smoothing the hair lightly with his movements. Curling caused by knotting. After doing all this, he seemed to have finally fulfilled a satisfying wish. He put one arm around Chu Qing Huang's waist, and the other arm passed through the back of Chu Qing Huang's head, and brought her directly into his arms. Then, sleep peacefully. Chu Qing Huang opened her eyes and glanced at the sleeping posture of the two of them, who looked like conjoined twins. She was silent for a long time, not knowing how to react. All right. He liked to deceive himself and others, so she simply acted with him. So Chu Qing Huang closed her eyes and slept as if nothing happened. But when she woke up the next morning, she looked at Fu Kang, who had already gotten up and stood in front of the bed, brought her clothes and was waiting to help her get dressed, and she was really silent for a long time. Fu Kang. Yes. I had a dream last night. Fu Kang's heart sank, he lowered his head and asked in a low voice, what did the master dream about? I dreamed that someone wanted to molest me. This sentence fell into his eardrums, and he was about to kneel down subconsciously. However, he accidentally caught a glimpse of the relaxed expression on Chu Qing Huang's face, which did not look like he was angry, so he hesitated for a moment in his support. Then he tentatively asked, Master, did you dream of anything else? Yet Chu Qing Huang nodded slowly, as if thinking, it seems like someone pulled my hair. Ah! Fu Kang frowned and couldn't help but wonder. Wasn't he very careful last night? The movement is very light, and it is impossible to pull the scalp. This person in the dream is really brave. Chu Qing Huang clicked his tongue, if I let you know who it is. Fu Kang's nerves froze, and his body immediately tensed up. Chu Qing Huang's eyes instantly fell on his face, why are you nervous? No. Fu Kang lowered his head and said in a weak voice, my subordinates also think that this person is really hateful. How could he enter the master's dream while he was asleep? How dare he treat his master so cruelly? Li, it's a crime worthy of death. Chu Qing Huang's mouth twitched, it is indeed hateful. Fu Kang looked at the hanging curtain that was hooked to the side and wanted to shrink behind the curtain to avoid letting his master see his guilty face. But at the same time, he couldn't help but start to struggle in his heart, should he recruit people from the real situation? Although even if he doesn't recruit, the master will definitely know. But if he did, how could he explain his behavior last night? I was so worried that I didn't know what to do for a while. Change your clothes. Seeing that his brows were about to knit together, Chu Qing Huang finally showed mercy and let him go. My father is coming soon, and I plan to go out of the city to greet him, but I can't let others find out. I leave, what do you think I should do? When it came to business, Fu Kang immediately returned to his senses and said, this subordinate will disguise himself for the master. Chu Qing Huang raised his eyebrows, can you still disguise yourself? Fu Kang nodded, yes. Why didn't you say it before? Fu Kang was silent, his expression looking a little innocent. Master has never asked his subordinates before. Yes, I've made progress. Instead of kneeling down to apologize every now and then, now everyone has begun to learn to defend themselves. Fine. Chu Qing Huang got up from the bed, helped Kang put on her clothes, and listened to her say, I will try your skills. Fu Kang nodded, yes. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 292. The morning passed quickly. After changing clothes and washing up, Chu Qing Huang and Fu Kang had breakfast together, and then took Fu Kang to the study. As for what to do in the study, of course, it was to paint. Rong Zhan, who had returned from a round of training in the military camp early in the morning, caught the maid of Dongshang Pavilion and asked her. When he learned that her sister was in the study, he couldn't help but wonder. What is going into the study early in the morning? He walked towards the study of Dongshang Pavilion thoughtfully. The long corridor was winding, and the pavilions and towers along the way were exquisite and unique. Rong Zhan admired them while walking until a young man in red came into his sight. Rong Zhan stopped and spoke slowly, Xiao Yuer. The red-clothed figure stopped instantly, turned around, and saw Rong Zhan on the corridor. He came over lightly and saluted respectfully, Your Highness, the King of Zhan. Where are you going? Hong Yu scratched his head, I'm bored, so I want to pay my respects to His Highness. What do you want to pay your respects to? Rong Zhan sneered, you can't even win favor. Even if you show up in front of Nuan 100 times a day, you are still an unfavored servant. Hong Yu's face fell, why does Your Highness, the King of Zhan say that? I have tried very hard to win favor. If His Highness doesn't like me like this, what can I do? Rong Zhan got goosebumps when he heard him say I all the time, if I were Nuan, I wouldn't like you like this either. Hong Yu frowned and looked at him with aggrieved eyes. Rong Zhan's scalp tingled when he was stared at, and he hurriedly drove away flies, get out. Get out as far as you can. Get out of here. Hong Yu hadn't had enough fun, but he didn't dare to go too far, so he bowed delicately and said, I'll take my leave. After saying that, without waiting for Rong Zhan's reaction, he left the corridor in an instant. Rong Zhan frowned and stared at his back, wondering where such a young man learned to be so nagging. Did he want to be an otaku in a brothel? What are you looking at, second brother? Looking at Hong Yu, Rong Zhan replied subconsciously, but when he turned around and saw the woman in front of him, he was stunned, sister. The woman stood in front of him, with a slender figure, a cold and delicate face, and her eyebrows and eyes were similar to Rong Zhan's. Of course, she was a woman, and her appearance was actually more like their mother. It's just. Do you think it's similar, brother? Rong Zhan suddenly came to his senses and realized that the person standing in front of him was Princess Chu Qing Huang of Ziki, the original owner of the body where her sister's soul resided. Although the person was still the same person, the appearance was completely different. Rong Zhan calmed down and looked at her face, which was very similar to her sister's. It's similar, very similar, Uncle Jin changed your appearance. Although the young people had learned this from Xie Jin for a few days since they were young, Only Xiejin was truly proficient in the art of disguise and could not let people see the flaws. No, Chu Qinghuang stretched out her hand and pointed at Fu Kang beside her. He did it for me. Rongzhan raised his eyebrows and looked at Fu Kang's face. You are also good at disguise. Fu Kang lowered his eyes. I have a little experience. Have you seen my sister's true appearance? No, Fu Kang said. The master drew the portrait. Rongzhan understood. Father and mother should be here soon. Chu Qinghuang took the initiative to explain the purpose of the disguise. I plan to go out of the city to welcome them. Are you willing to go with me? Rongzhan shook his head. It would be too eye-catching if I went with you. People don't know your face, and they will be more suspicious when they see me and you together. After a pause, but when did you become so considerate? You actually took the initiative to welcome father. I am mother's considerate little cotton-padded jacket, Chu Qinghuang said indifferently, who is as heartless as you. Rongzhan raised his hand to knock her, but just as he raised his hand, he saw Fu Kang move quickly. His body teleported to stand in front of Chu Qinghuang, looking at Rongzhan, his sharp and cold eyes, and instantly entered a state of alert. What do you want to do? Rongzhan looked at him with an extremely calm expression. Want to attack me? Fu Kang was silent, then lowered his eyes and took a step back. He didn't do it on purpose, it was just a subconscious reaction. If you don't want to go, you can go to the palace to have tea and chat with the emperor, and help me keep an eye on the king of Zhenbei, Chu Qinghuang said. We'll leave first. Rongzhan frowned. I'm destined to work hard for you. Chu Qinghuang thought for a while. When father arrives in the imperial city, I will definitely say a few good words for you in front of father. Rongzhan laughed angrily, raised his hand and gave her a slap. I owed you in my last life. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 293. On the 10th day of July, Rong Yu and Nan 11 stayed at a villa in the suburbs of the city. Don't ask who owns the villa. The power of Juxiao Pavilion throughout the world has never been an exaggeration, but a fact that no one can imagine. Chu Qinghuang and Fu Kang rode all the way here on horseback, and it only took 2 hours. There was no one guarding outside the villa, so there was no one who could pass the message for them. Chu Qinghuang knocked on the door, but no one responded from inside. Without saying a word, she flew up and jumped over the wall. Fu Kang followed closely behind. Her figure was as agile as a rainbow, and her light skills were beautiful and neat. As soon as the two climbed over the wall, a surprised voice sounded from inside. Someone is doing scoundrels in broad daylight. Do you really not know how to write the word death? Chu Qinghuang and Fu Kang stood on the ground almost at the same time, looking up slightly, looking at the man who was basking in the sun in the yard. Oh no, basking in the sun. Chu Qinghuang looked up at the sky. The bright sunlight could burn people to a crisp, but it was hot in the summer, and everyone wanted to stay in the shade. At this time, those who sat in the best light under the golden sun were probably either mentally ill or physically ill. Chu Qinghuang lowered her eyes slightly and looked at the man opposite. Uncle Yao, have you been feeling unwell recently? Xian Yuanyao was originally lying on the chair with his eyes squinting. When he heard Chu Qinghuang's voice, he quietly opened his eyes a little. When he saw a living Xian Yuan Rongnuan standing in front of him, he jumped up in shock. Nuan girl, are you alive? Chu Qinghuang's mouth twitched, and he looked at him subtly. Xian Yuanyao looked closely and couldn't help but sighed. Ajin's skills are getting better and better. It looks like Nuan girl herself. If a timid person is scared, he will definitely be scared to death. It wasn't Uncle Jin who did it, Chu Qinghuang corrected casually. It was the one next to me. The one next to me? Xian Yuanyao turned his eyes slightly and looked at Fu Kang standing beside Chu Qinghuang. squinting his eyes and looking at him. Which onion is this? The big white onion grown in my garden. Xian Yuanyao chuckled, I haven't seen you for a long time. Nuan girl has become more humane and doesn't look so cold. Not bad. She actually learned to be humorous. Could it be the credit of this shadow guard? Where are my parents? They are resting. Xian Yuanyao turned and walked towards the open hall. The weather is hot. Your Majesty stays in the carriage all day, which makes the master feel distressed. Look, as soon as he got off the bed, he asked someone to prepare several basins of ice cubes in the house to cool down. Chu Qinghuang frowned when she heard this. Her father was fine. He had profound skills and was not afraid of cold or heat. But her mother was a little weak after all. It was really hard to travel in a carriage in such weather. She said nothing more and followed Xian Yuanyao through the open hall to the main courtyard where her father and mother were staying temporarily. The courtyard was deep and the trees were lush. Arriving at the main courtyard, Xian Yuanyao couldn't help but turn his head and look at Fu Kang again. This young man is quite handsome. Great minds think alike. Xian Yuanyao raised his eyebrows. This is not what you would say. The little princess used to look down on men. Chu Qinghuang said, this is different now. What makes him happy for you? I can't say what's good about him, Chu Qinghuang said indifferently. He is not as proficient in both civil and military strategies as my two brothers, nor as deep-hearted as Uncle Jin, as cunning as a fox, nor as brilliant as Uncle Yao when he was young, but he just makes me happy. Speaking of this, Chu Qinghuang pondered for a moment. It's hard to say about feelings. If you don't like someone, even if you are of noble and powerful status, or even if you are extremely talented, you still can't be happy with him. At this point, Chu Qinghuang pondered for a moment. It's hard to say about feelings. If you don't like someone, even if you are of noble and powerful status, or even if you are extremely talented, you still can't be happy with him. But it can't make people moved. Xian Yuanyao joked, you mean this one is more to your liking? Chu Qinghuang nodded, for now, there is no one more to your liking than him. Xian Yuanyao frowned, but the gap between you two is too big. Chu Qinghuang was also domineering. I think I am the one who least needs to consider the same status. Why? Because Nuan has always acted willfully and unrestrained. With a creak, the door was opened from the inside, and Nan 11 smiled and said, for now, I haven't met anyone else who is to my liking, so I will just put up with it for the time being. When I find someone who is more to my liking in the future, I will replace this one at any time. That's why I said that there is no need for a good match, as long as she is happy. Xian Yuanyao was shocked. So this is what he meant? He turned his head and looked at Fu Kang. Fu Kang pursed his lips, and there was nothing unusual in his expression with his eyebrows lowered and eyes drooping, but I don't know if his heart is as calm as the surface. Chu Qinghuang raised her eyes and looked at her mother who was smiling lightly, and her father who was standing at the door with his hands behind his back. She turned around and ordered, Fu Kang, kneel down and call me master. Fu Kang knelt down without saying a word, and before he could even see the master's face clearly, he lowered his head and called, master. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 294. Rong Yu held Nan 11's hand, turned around and went back to the house to sit down. He brought the freshly cut fruits that his servants had just delivered to Nan 11. It's hot, eat some fruits. Chu Qinghuang followed him into the room. Father. You want to eat too? Rong Yu glanced at her and casually ordered Xian Yuanyao, have someone bring over another plate. Xian Yuanyao nodded, yes. Uncle Yao, don't bother. Chu Qinghuang frowned, I don't want to eat fruit. Rong Yu hummed, herbal tea, or iced plum juice. Chu Qinghuang thought for a while, lifted up her clothes, and knelt on the ground. My daughter has met her father and her mother. I wish you two elders a long life, eternal youth, and unswerving love. Live 200 years? Xian Yuanyao touched his nose and secretly thought that this was the first time he heard such a statement. Nan 11 was unhappy for a moment and hurriedly helped her up. What are you doing? Are you sincerely making us feel bad? Chu Qinghuang didn't show any pretense. She stood up and said straight to the point, Father, can you accept Fukang as your disciple? Why? Chu Qinghuang walked over and poured a cup of tea and presented it to Rong Yu. He is more popular with me, but apart from his strong martial arts, he is still a bit weak in other aspects. I want my father to take him to Canyon Mountain teach, Tune. Rong Yu said calmly, the duty of the Shadow Guard is to protect the master. Strong martial arts is enough. Chu Qinghuang said, but dash. Okay, Nan 11 smiled lightly, it's sunny outside, let him come in first. Chu Qinghuang turned to look at Fukang, did you hear that? Master wife wants you to come in. I didn't see Fukang's body move, but in an instant he knelt from outside the door to the inside, thank you, master. Rong Yu held the teacup, with no emotion on his noble and indifferent face, and silently looked at the young man in front of him. She has good looks. Nan 11 also looked closely and came to this conclusion at first glance, it seems that my Nuanier is also a girl who judges people by their appearance. Chu Qinghuang didn't deny it and nodded, it's pleasing to the eye. Looking at him makes me feel good. Although appearance only accounts for a small part of the reason for her good mood, another reason is that his psychological activities are more interesting. However, love at first sight always comes from lust. She has a strong sense of self-control. There is no love at first sight, nor lust. It can only be said that in the process of getting along, she gradually discovered that Fukang is a person who suits her taste. As for the future, she hasn't thought that far yet. The current focus should be on Zikajiang Mountain, and her children's personal relationship is not urgent. You like him? Chu Qinghuang nodded, I like it very much. Like between men and women. Chu Qinghuang was silent for a moment and told the truth, my daughter has not thought about it so deeply for the time being, but if she wants to get married in the future, it will probably be him. Isn't this called not thinking that deeply? I've already thought about getting married, how much more can I think about it? Nan 11 frowned, marriage is a matter of parents' orders, how can you make such a decision on your own? Chu Qinghuang looked at her silently. Don't look at me, it's useless to look at me. Nan 11 pretended to be majestic, your father is the head of the family. Chu Qinghuang laughed, father, don't you also listen to you? It's okay to accept disciples, and it's okay to create direct disciples, but I have 3 conditions. Rong Yu took a sip of tea, if you agree, I can agree to it now. Chu Qinghuang said, father, please speak. First, he is not allowed to leave Canyon Mountain within 3 years, second, you are not allowed to interfere with how I teach him. Rong Yu said, third, unless I think he is qualified to marry you, you are not allowed to mention the matter of getting married. Chu Qinghuang was silent. In fact, she feels that these 3 conditions are not difficult. After all, it definitely takes time to learn skills from a teacher. You can't fish for 3 days and dry the net for 2 days. It's like a joke. It's best not to be distracted. She knew how her father taught his disciples, so she had been mentally prepared for it. Moreover, the shadow guard who came out of the dark pavilion had already experienced the most cruel training methods in the world. For him, her father's methods totally affordable. As for whether you are qualified or not, she believed that the apprentice whom her father personally taught could not be a piece of rotten wood. She must have the qualifications. It was impossible to say that during the 3 years of master-disciple relationship, her father could love Fukang and treat Fukang as half a son. Chu Qinghuang had no objection, but she still had to ask Fukang what he thought. Fukang, are you willing? Fukang lowered his head and remained silent for a long time before slowly shaking his head. Unwilling, Chu Qinghuang frowned, why? Fukang said nothing. Rongyu closed his eyes and drank tea, without any special reaction. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 295. Fu Kang lowered his eyes, his voice was silent. I don't have much time. Not much time? Chu Qing Huang frowned. What does this mean? Fu Kang clenched his hands. The best combat age for shadow guards is from marriage to 25 years old. Some begin to degenerate before 25 years old, and some, due to long-term medication, injuries, and illnesses, they may not even live past 30 years old. Chu Qing Huang frowned slightly. I don't want to waste 3 years learning skills. Fu Kang lowered his head, ashamed for failing his master's kindness, but his attitude was more firm than ever before. I don't want to leave my master. The master was appointed as the crown prince, which did not mean that he was a complete winner. As long as those princes were still alive, it meant that the risk had never disappeared. He knew that the master had the ability to protect herself, and he also knew that the master's parents and the eldest and second brothers would help her, but 3 years was too long, and there were too many variables during the period, so he couldn't do nothing. He was a shadow guard, and his duty was to protect the master. If an accident occurred due to his dereliction of duty, he could not atone for his sin even if he died 1,000 times. Besides, he didn't know how long he could live. If his lifespan was the same as other shadow guards, he would be injured and sick at the age of 30 at most because of overdrawing his physical strength, and he would only drag down his master. Since that was the case, it was better to cherish the time they could spend together. What's the point of learning more things if you don't have time to accompany him and can't use them? You're here to talk to me before you've even reached an agreement. Rongyu looked indifferent. Fu Kang pursed his lips, wanting to admit his mistake but not knowing where to start. He didn't know at first that it would take 3 years to learn skills. For a shadow guard, 3 years was a very long time. He had to go through 5 levels and kill 6 generals in the dark chamber, and he didn't know how many times he had passed the gate of hell, facing the choice between life and death at all times. He was asked to go to the princess's mansion at the age of 16. Before the age of 16, he risked his life every day. After the age of 16, he left the dark chamber and learned martial arts. Every day was extremely precious, because one day less. If he were the princess before, he might not be so entangled and would just obey orders. But the master now is the one he wants to protect with his life. 3 years away from him, just thinking about him is enough to make him restless day and night. How can he concentrate on learning? Chu Qing Huang sighed. Can't father see that he is stubborn? Nan 11 glanced at Fu Kang, and he was indeed stubborn. He was similar to Rongyu in the past. But Rongyu was stubborn and even a little paranoid at the time. He knew that it was wrong but couldn't stop him from doing it. Whoever dared to oppose them being together, he would do whatever it took to get rid of him. And Fu Kang stubbornly maintained his loyalty, desperately guarding his duty, not fighting or competing. If you put aside his usual jealous behavior, his behavior can really be regarded as not fighting or competing, without desire or demand. Even if Chu Qing Huang promised him the identity of the son-in-law, he could never get rid of his identity as a shadow guard. I don't know what will happen in the future, at least for now. Status, power and so on are not as important as loyalty, but it's normal. They have been subjected to harsh training since childhood, and the loyalty instilled by the Dark Pavilion has lasted for so many years. How can it be changed overnight? There is nothing wrong with loyalty. At least in Nan 11's opinion, there is a young man who protects her daughter so loyally and puts her daughter in the most important position in his heart, and this person makes her daughter happy, which is a happy thing. Other external conditions are not important. Her daughter is noble enough and does not need the names of other noble families to add icing on the cake. She can care nothing about anything, as long as she is happy. Ability can be cultivated. Stubbornness can also be taught slowly. Anyway, they are not old now, and it is not too late to talk about feelings in 2 years. When Nuaniar's hegemony is successful, when the young man is enlightened, sitting on the splendid country and experiencing the beauty under the flowers and the moon, that feeling should be better. Nuaniar is braver, stronger, and more independent than I was back then. Nan 11 said something that only wrong you could understand. Fukang is still young and doesn't understand that staying together forever is the best destination for love. Nuaniar can teach him slowly in the future, there's no rush. Wrong, you didn't say anything. Fukang, you probably don't quite understand what it means to become her disciple today. Let me explain it to you. Nan 11 looked at the young man. Nuaniar brought you here to recognize your identity. You will stay with her for the rest of your life, not for 2 months, 3 years, or 2 years, but for 30 or 50 years. If you like Nuaniar, then you should consider many aspects and make yourself an outstanding man. You can't always regard yourself as a shadow guard. Shadow guards are not qualified to talk about feelings. If you want to expect feelings, you must put aside the identity of a pure shadow guard and transform loyalty into a more powerful protection. As for the problem you are worried about, it actually doesn't exist at all. The lifespan of shadow guards is indeed shorter than that of ordinary people, but most of the time it is due to improper diet, insufficient rest, and long-term overdraft of physical strength, not because shadow guards are born with short lifespans. Nan 11's eyes fell on his face and smiled faintly. You look good. There should be no problem with diet and rest in the recent period. I believe Nuaniar will not let you go to see the King of Hell too early. Take good care of yourself. Not to mention a long life of 100 years, it should be no problem to live to 70 or 80. Why do you have to tell him so much? Wrong, you said in a cold and distant voice. I don't lack disciples, and I'm not interested in accepting him. Nuaniar, take him back and let him be a shadow guard. When you become the Queen of Ziki, I will have people collect beautiful boys from all over the world and send them to you. You won't have to worry about no one pleasing you. Fukang lowered his head and said respectfully, I am willing. What did you say? Wrong, you looked at him coldly. You are willing. Should I be grateful and thank you for being willing to become your disciple? Master, please calm down. Fukang kowtowed. I know my mistakes and am willing to be punished by you. Wrong Yu's eyes were like snow. Master, please accept me as your disciple. Fukang pursed his lips and begged, I will study hard. Master, if you punish me, I will accept it respectfully and will never dare to resist. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 296. Wrong, you said nothing. Chu Qing Huang stepped forward, picked up the teapot and poured tea for her father. It's useless to support the blue sky, please teach me a lesson. Wrong, you glanced at her. My daughter's family should focus on the country, and the personal relationships between children can be put aside for the time being. As soon as he finished speaking, Nan 11 chuckled. Wrong, you turned to look at her. 11er, why are you laughing? There was a gentle smile on Nan 11's eyebrows, and she shook her head understandingly. It's nothing. People often say that a man should put his career first and then start a family. This was the first time she heard that a daughter's family should put their family first. It turned out to be Wrong Yu. Wrong Yu took the tea from Chu Qing Huang's hand and listened to her say, my daughter really has no intention of thinking about her children's personal relationship for the time being, so isn't this why she sent Fukang to her father for a test? If my father thinks he is okay, just train him carefully. If you think he is not good enough, Canyon Mountain is full of places to bury people. Just find a cliff and deal with it. Xian Yuanyao was speechless. Is this retreat an advance? However, the tone of Xiao Nuan'er's words is exactly the same as her master. No wonder people often say that daughters are more like their fathers. The princess's temperament is more like her master than her two brothers. Wrong you, don't you feel sorry for your daughter who is riding a horse against the sun? Nan 11 has always been a loving mother. Since he is the person recognized by his daughter, he should be accepted when it is time to accept him. If you embarrass him at this time, you are embarrassing yourself. Besides, he is also a loving mother after 3 years of testing. Do you still know whether he can do it? Rong Yu has been invincible all his life, and he has a keen eye for recognizing and employing people. In this life, he has two nemesis, one is Nan 11 and the other is his daughter. Even if it's not clear yet whether Fukang is worthy of Nuan'er's liking, he will definitely be able to figure it out within 3 days at most. Hearing what Nan 11 said at this time, Rong Yu couldn't help but look at Qing Huang. You can disguise yourself well with that face. Chu Qing Huang stretched out her hand and pointed at Fukang, thanks to his contribution. Nan 11 couldn't help but smile again. Okay, let's go and take a rest first. I'll have someone bring food to you later. Chu Qing Huang hummed, when will the apprenticeship ceremony begin? There's no rush, Nan 11 said, you go and have a rest first, and I'll discuss it with your father. Chu Qing Huang was silent. Okay. So she called Fukang, turned around and walked out together. Xian Yuanyao quickly called the servants, took them to settle down temporarily, and sent 2 plates of fresh fruits over. Nuan'er seems to have become a lot gentler recently. Nan 11 watched the 2 people leave before speaking softly. I used to be cold, but like you, I became much softer when I had feelings. Rong Yu hummed. I'm just slow and sensible. Nan 11 laughed. I'm better than you at this. I won't do irrational things because of feelings. Rong Yu still nodded and agreed with her unconditionally. Fukang looks a lot like you back then, Nan 11 said, unable to help laughing. Do you think Nuan'er and I both like nurturing husbands? Rong Yu turned to look at her, thinking of what happened a long time ago. His eyebrows softened. He and I are still different. Well, it's not exactly the same. Nan 11 fell into long-lasting memories. You had a temper at that time, and it was not small. Fukang was much more docile than you. Rong Yu did not deny it. Because they have different origins and experiences. I have always been thinking about what kind of man Nuan'er will like in the future. Nan 11 leaned on the brocade couch, her voice was a little lazier. She has a cold temper, and most young men from aristocratic families are used to it under the current system. Men are superior to women, and even if their concepts and perceptions can be changed, they may not be willing to get used to such a powerful woman. Besides, Nuan'er probably doesn't like superficial men in general. Those men are not worthy of Nuan'er. Rong Yu said, it would be good to find a docile one who will listen to her unconditionally and will not make her unhappy. In the hearts of parents, their daughters are the best no matter what. Of course, Nuan'er is indeed excellent. It's just that for a woman who is too noble, under the deep-rooted concepts of the world, it is indeed not easy to find a husband who is satisfactory in all aspects. In your eyes, there should be no man in this world who is worthy of Nuan'er. Nan 11 chuckled. As a woman, Nuan'er has a mind and ambition that is not inferior to that of a man. As a mother, there is no glory, but no matter whether it is a man or a woman, a person is always alone, and we can rest assured when we have one person. Rong Yu handed her a cup of tea. Do you like him? Nan 11 pondered for a moment. This child Fukang has a good appearance. Although he is a shadow guard, his eyebrows have an indescribable nobility. Rong Yu said, although the Yan kingdom is small, the blood of the royal family is nobler than that of ordinary people. Nan 11 hummed, even though I have a stubborn temper, the more I am like this, I don't have to worry about having other thoughts in the future. I quite like it. Rong Yu was silent for a moment and nodded slowly. Since Nuani R likes it and Nan 11 is satisfied, there is nothing more to say. $window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 297. After walking into the room and closing the door, Chu Qing Huang walked aside and sat down, and began to settle accounts with him. Come over. Fuekang pursed his lips and walked slowly over for a few steps. Chu Qing Huang raised his eyebrows. Why are you so far away from me? Are you afraid that I will eat you? Fuekang shook his head and hurriedly took a few steps forward. At this moment, he didn't act like a shadow guard at all, but more like a little white rabbit in a wolf's den. Chu Qing Huang raised his head and made moves, as if he were changing cats and dogs. But Fuekang just fell for this, kneeling down in front of her and obediently tilting his head towards her. Tell yourself, do you deserve a beating? Chu Qing Huang said calmly, twisting Fuekang's ears. If you dare to go back on your word in front of Master, I have convinced you. Fuekang didn't dare to move and pursed his lips innocently. I know my mistake. I just don't want to be separated from my master for too long. My father said that you can't go down the mountain for 3 years, but he didn't say that I can't go up the mountain for 3 years. Chu Qing Huang frowned. Why are you so stupid? What's going on in your head? Fuekang's eyes lit up and he raised his head subconsciously. Chu Qing Huang's hand slipped, and she let go of his ears. She sat upright and said calmly, I'm getting used to you and you are becoming more and more unruly. My master is wise. Fuekang was very obedient. The corner of Chu Qing Huang's mouth twitched. Don't flatter me, anything you say is useless at this time. Fuekang lowered his head and thought for a while. My master has been riding for 2 hours, and his back must be sore. Can I help my master? Chu Qing Huang looked at him without saying a word. Fuekang's voice was very low. I will definitely behave well in the future. In that case, I'll give you a chance to show off. Chu Qing Huang stood up, walked to the inner room, and lay down on the bed. I do have a sore back. Fuekang raised the corners of his lips in an imperceptible manner, walked over and sat sideways on the bed, and began to massage her shoulders and neck. Master wife is very gentle, he whispered, as gentle as master. Chu Qing Huang sneered, you should say it in front of my mother. I don't dare. Fuekang shook his head, master will be unhappy. Although he didn't see clearly what his master looked like, he could feel that the other person's bearing and pressure were very strong, which made him understand more and more who the master's pressure was inherited from. I don't dare to be gentler than my mother, Chu Qing Huang said, but you are very lucky. My mother is quite satisfied with you. Usually if her mother likes something, her father will basically have no objection. Father has agreed to accept you as his disciple. Once things are settled here, you will follow father to Canyon Mountain. You don't need to worry too much about the affairs in Ziki. Chu Qing Huang's voice was a little lazier. You must not be opportunistic or play tricks in front of your father. Although he is like this, he probably doesn't have much fun. Fuekang nodded, my subordinates know. The crown prince will be appointed in August. At the end of the year, I will see if I can find time to go to Canyon Mountain to celebrate the new year with my parents. Chu Qing Huang thought about the chaos in Ziki, and she was not sure whether she would be free. If no one bothers me, we can probably meet by the end of the year. Although the two of them haven't separated yet, Fuekang has already begun to think of the joy of meeting each other, and can't help but feel expectant in his heart. There was a sound of footsteps outside. Fuekang stood up and went to open the door, took the fruit plate from the maid's hand, closed the door, turned and walked into the inner room. stabbed a piece of watermelon with a bamboo skewer and put it to Chu Qinghuang's mouth. "Master." Chu Qinghuang turned over and sat on the edge of the bed, eating a few mouthfuls of watermelon and peaches with Fukang actively feeding her. "Aren't my parents good looking?" Fukang was stunned. I didn't see clearly. To be precise, he didn't dare to look up at all. "Didn't you see clearly?" Chu Qinghuang suddenly turned to look at him. Her eyes were particularly subtle. "It means that you have obviously met the master and the master's wife, but you still don't know what they look like." Fukang was extremely ashamed and lowered his head. "Subordinate, subordinate." Chu Qinghuang held her forehead, truly convinced and convinced by him. What kind of living treasure is this? But what can be done? She has a crush on herself, so she has to endure being stupid. Today is the 10th day of the lunar month, and there are only 2 days left before the birthday banquet. Chu Qinghuang doesn't have much time to stay here. After lunch, he and Fukang stayed in the room to rest for half a day. The most important thing has been settled. After a meal and a cup of tea, I said goodbye to my parents in the evening and prepared to go home. Going back so soon, Nan 11 was surprised. "Is it too hasty?" "It's not good for my daughter to be away for too long." Chu Qinghuang walked out with Nan 11. "If we go back at this time, we can arrive before the city gate closes. We should enter the palace early tomorrow morning." Rong Yu walked beside Nan 11 with his hands behind his back, and said with a calm expression, "Although the princes of Ziki are unworthy of education, they will not be willing to accept the fact that the princess is the heir. You must be careful when you return and don't be careless." "Father, don't worry." A faint smile appeared on Chu Qinghuang's face. "My daughter will not embarrass her father." Rong Yu said no more. After walking out of the door and watching the two people get on their horses neatly, Nan 11 sighed. "These two people are only about 3 feet taller in age, but they are already the strongest people in Ziki, and will have the most noble status in Ziki." As expected, heroes emerge from youth, and each generation becomes stronger. Rong Yu hummed, "It's really good." After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 298. The ministers have been extremely calm these past 2 days. Due to the presence of distinguished guests and the approaching birthday of the eldest princess, smart people did not dare to provoke the emperor's displeasure at this time, so it seemed that there was harmony inside and outside the palace. When Rong Zhan had nothing to do, he would take Rong Chen into the palace to drink and chat with the emperor. They talked about national affairs, people's livelihood, army training, war horse equipment, and the upcoming autumn. The 4 princes lived in the prince's residence. They could neither go to the harem to pay respects to the queen mother and empress, nor could they leave the palace and return to the palace. Of course, they could not conspire and discuss with the ministers. They were almost suffocated to the point of going moldy. As the queen's legitimate son, the second brother is willing to give up the throne to a princess. In the spacious palace, the 4 of them sat together and drank tea in rare harmony. Chu Tianyan said lightly, "My father has 5 princes, the 4 of them are all adults, and there is no successor to the throne, so why break the rules left by our ancestors and allow a deviant princess to take the throne?" Chu Tianqiu took a sip of tea and said nothing. He naturally knew that the 3rd child was unwilling to give in, and neither was the 5th child. Even the eldest brother, who had always had no desires and desires from beginning to end, was also unwilling to give in. But so what if he was unwilling? The 3rd child's mother has passed away and the Feng family has been assigned. Now he has no ability to compete at all. Even if he hates Chu Qinghuang to the core of his heart, there is nothing he can do. He just wants to provoke him to deal with Chu Qinghuang. "Third brother is right," Chu Tianzhang said coldly. "Chu Qinghuang is a scourge, a murderous god who kills without blinking an eye. If she becomes the queen, none of us will end well." Chu Tianqiu said calmly, "Fifth brother, you don't have to worry too much. 7th sister is your biological sister. Even for the sake of concubine Duan, she will not kill you. My biological sister, Chu Tianzheng mocked, second brother is promoting her, so she is my enemy. Chu Tianling took a sip of tea and said nothing. We brothers are all in the same boat now. A cold and sarcastic look flashed across Chu Tianyan's face. Having been put into such a situation by my own sister, it will make people laugh out loud if I tell you. Second brother doesn't hate Chu Qinghuang at all. Chu Tianzheng looked up at him and smiled coldly. Now only the eldest brother still retains the title of prince. The second brother, the legitimate son of the empress, has also become a county king. I have to say, Chu Qinghuang is really capable. Chu Tianqiu glanced at Chu Tianling calmly. What do you think, brother? I don't have any opinion. Chu Tianling smiled. Whoever becomes the crown prince has nothing to do with me. I will not participate and I don't want to express any opinions. No matter who my father appoints in the end, we are only qualified to obey. Chu Tianqiu smiled meaningfully and said, brother, it's better to think openly. So what can I do if I can't think about it? Brothers and sisters are fighting to the death, but there is only one dragon chair. Chu Tianling's face flashed with sadness. Sometimes I envy the ordinary people's family. Although there is no succession to the throne, I can't enjoy it. They live a wealthy and pampered life, but they live a comfortable life without fighting, death, or calculation. The family is harmonious, lively, and enviable. As soon as he said this, the other three pairs of eyes fell on his face, as if they heard something incredible. Their expressions were weird, even mocking. Is the elder brother really envious, or are you just pretending to be ignorant? Chu Tianyan sneered. The family is in harmony and lively. This is the funniest joke I have heard this year. Chu Tianling frowned. What's so funny? My eldest brother has never really understood the hardships of people's livelihood. He has never seen the poverty where they cannot afford 3 meals a day. He has never seen the misery of having too many children to feed and a daughter who can only exchange for 2 taels of silver. He has never experienced the misery of a poor and humble couple. The quarrels and fights. The more Chu Tianyan said, the more ironic he felt. Brother, I don't even know that a father who is addicted to gambling can use his wife and children as a plan to lose his sorrow. Would you envy such liveliness? Chu Tianling's expression froze. I am talking about an ordinary home, not what you are talking about. The two cannot be generalized. What I just mentioned are common phenomena. Chu Tianyan said coldly. Do you think that all the common people can have enough to eat and wear, that every family has enough food and clothing, and that brothers are in harmony? Okay. Chu Tianqiu frowned. What are you arguing about the common people for? What we are going to discuss today is the crown prince. There is nothing to discuss about the crown prince. Chu Tianling calmed down his expression. Father has already decreed the appointment of Kamei as the crown prince, and even the date of the ceremony has been set. How can you still make father change his mind? Chu Qinghuang must have an ulterior relationship with Dongling. Chu Tianzheng said in a cold tone. Otherwise, Dongling would have no reason to help her like this. Chu Tianyan and Chu Tianqiu looked at him at the same time. Did the fifth brother find out? Chu Tianzheng is Chu Qinghuang's biological brother. He must know Chu Qinghuang better than they do. He may have mastered the other party's unknown secrets long ago. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 299. Chu Tianzheng met the three pairs of questioning eyes and frowned. What can I find? She is not close to me. That's right. Chu Tianyan looked away in disappointment, secretly wondering who Chu Qinghuang was getting close to. She was obviously the princess of Ziki, but she seemed to have a grudge against the Ziki royal family. Not only did she persecute his mother, concubine, and sister, but he even punished his own mother and sent his entire uncle and family to prison. is really a strange disaster that is rare to see in 1,000 years. Chu Tianyin hated Chu Qinghuang in his heart. When he thought that his mother died quietly without even a glorious funeral, he wanted to crush Chu Qinghuang's bones into ashes. My father is even more ridiculous. In order to please the so-called distinguished guests in Dongling, he trapped his sons in the palace and refused to let them out, just to help his daughter to ascend the throne smoothly. As expected, people with impure blood are all ambitious. Chu Tianyin thought gloomily that the emperor must have known the true identity of his mother and concubine, and he was so anxious to kill his mother and concubine and his sister in order to protect his throne. He must avenge this blood feud, otherwise he will be a son of man in vain. The registration ceremony is scheduled for August, and there are still more than 20 days. Chu Tianzheng said gloomily, Prince Dongling War should not stay in Ziki for so long. Once they leave, a few of us will unite to resist. My father's decision is to unite the civil and military forces of the entire court to make his death clear and beg his father to take back his life. I don't believe that my father can insist on enthroning Chu Qinghuang when he sees so many people opposing it. Chu Tianqiu nodded as if taking the overall situation into account. Fifth brother's suggestion is good. There has never been a precedent for a female emperor to be in power in Ziki. Besides, the seventh sister has a violent temper. If she really becomes the emperor, I'm afraid she will be even more unscrupulous and kill whoever she wants. When the time comes, no one can restrain her, and Ziki will only fall into disaster. Chu Tianling pondered, second brother is right. Seventh sister's temper is really not suitable for being an emperor. Father's decision is too rash. Have you raided your home a few times and you have the courage? Chu Tianyin sneered, is your father afraid of poverty? If a brainless person like Chu Qinghuang really becomes the emperor, the civil and military forces of the entire dynasty will be in dire straits. Who will do you still dare to do things seriously? Maybe one day your family will be confiscated and your family will be wiped out. Okay, what's the point of us accusing so many people? My father can't hear it. Chu Tianling glanced at him and said in a calm voice, the top priority is to unite to prevent Kame from becoming a prince. I think what the fifth brother said is right. It can be all the ministers are opposed together. As long as more than half of the officials in the court kneel and beg the father to take back his orders, the father will definitely not insist anymore. It should be said that I dare not persist anymore. There are a lot of corrupt officials in the government, but every department needs manpower, and the ministers who are qualified to hold court meetings every day are the central humerus of the court. More than half of the opposition means that these ministers who hold the power will not obey this decree. If the father persists and the ministers go on strike together, Ziki will only fall into a worse situation. The four of them had their own thoughts, but they all decided to unite first and destroy Chu Qinghuang's plan to become the concubine. After all, no one wanted to let a woman dominate them. As for the four of them, let's deal with Chu Qinghuang first, and then we can compete based on our abilities. Although on the surface it seems that Chu Tianqiu is the most likely to be the final winner, everyone else has their own plans in mind and will not easily reveal their own chips, their self-righteous plans. Chu Tianqiu took a sip of tea and sneered calmly. Regardless of whether it was the eldest brother or the third brother, he knew exactly what was in his mind, and they all thought they had a chance to win. However, he would soon let them understand that he was the emperor's legitimate son, and the throne could only belong to him in the end. Others are just wasting their efforts. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 300. On the evening of July 11th, Rong Yu and Nan 11's carriage slowly drove into the imperial city. They drove lightly and simply without notifying anyone, so naturally no one needed to greet them. However, the Ziki monarchs and ministers did not receive the news, which does not mean that Rongzhan and Xiejin did not receive the news either. In the evening, the two of them rode out of the city with a few guards, and saw the carriage that had entered the city at the city gate. Rongzhan and Xiejing got off their horses, looked at Xian Yuanyao who was personally escorting the carriage, and said hello to each other. Father Rongzhan stood in front of the carriage and greeted him respectfully, "How are you, mother?" After Her Majesty the Queen abdicated, it was no longer allowed to call her the Queen Mother. However, Rong Yu had accumulated so much power that Rongzhan was always in awe of him and never changed the title. The curtain of the carriage was opened, revealing Nan 11's smiling face. "We are all fine." Rongzhan glanced at Rong Yu quietly and listened to his father's instructions, "Go directly to your sister's house." "Yes." Putting down the car curtain, several people got on their horses again and headed towards the inner city. Although the princes were all imprisoned in the palace and could not get the news in time, the ministers of Ziki were still free. Especially the important ministers' mansions had many eyes and ears. Naturally, they saw the scene of Dongling War King and Xie Shaofu personally greeting them, so even if you don't know who is sitting in the carriage, you can guess it. A small sensation soon occurred in the imperial city. The emperor naturally had the most eyes, and Chu Xuanyi, the commander of the imperial army, immediately reported the news to the emperor. "The regent of Dongling has arrived." Chu Xuanyi nodded, "It should be them. The ones Dongling War King and Mr. Xie went to pick up." His Majesty the Emperor nodded, "That should be correct. They went directly to the princess's mansion." "Yes." His Majesty the Emperor was silent for a moment, and frowned. "Xianyi, do you think the Dongling royal family's attitude towards Qing Huang is too unusual?" "It is indeed extraordinary." Chu Xuanyi nodded, "I heard that Her Majesty the Queen and the Regent have 3 children, 2 sons and 1 daughter. The Regent personally trained the current Emperor and the War King, and he has strict requirements on his 2 sons. My daughter is my favorite, but something unexpected happened to Princess Dongling." The Emperor glanced at him. Of course he knew that something unexpected happened to Princess Dongling, so the War King and his father and mother both had some empathy for Qing Huang. But empathy is also too easy to transfer. After all, she is someone else's daughter. They have never even met Qing Huang before. Even if they have the idea of recognizing Qing Huang as their adopted daughter, is this too fast? And so is Qing Huang. Wasn't she very cold and distant before? If you are not enthusiastic about your mother, concubine, or brother, why did you accept the War King from Dongling so quickly? The Emperor thought deeply. Could it be that Qing Huang was worried about the instability of the throne, so he took the opportunity to get closer to the Dongling royal family? Never mind. Why are you thinking so much now? He should go and meet with the regent of Dongling first. The Emperor stood up and said, "Chen Hai, please leave the palace." "Yes." So the Emperor left the palace under the escort of the imperial guards and went straight to the eldest princess' mansion. Rong Yu and Nan 11 got off the car and entered the mansion. Xiejin and Xian Yuanyao were a step behind and chatted, "I heard that the eldest princess of Shu and Mr. Yun are also here. Why didn't I see them entering the city together?" In order to avoid causing too much panic and speculation, they rested in Beicheng for 1 night and returned to the city early tomorrow morning. Xian Yuanyao said, turning to look at Xiejin, "Is this a gathering of kings?" Xiejin curled his lips and smiled, "No, they are all our own people." Xian Yuanyao's expression faltered and he fell silent immediately. "Well, the situation is really like this now. They are obviously unrelated countries on the surface, but because of Yunting and Yeqing Cheng, Shu has long become a vassal state of Dongling. Because Ziki has their princess, they will turn from a country that pays tribute every year into an ally. In fact, they will still be their own people. The emperor of the Zhou dynasty was the nephew of their lord and one of their own. After Dongling annexed Nanyu and the Yu kingdom, it had already invisibly encroached on the Zhou dynasty, Shu kingdom, and Ziki kingdom in a bloodless way. On the surface, everything seemed calm, but as long as Emperor Dongling wanted to dominate the world, almost everything would be destroyed. "It's done effortlessly." Xian Yuanyao sighed, the only thing left in northern Xinjiang is a single tree. Sooner or later, Northern Territory will become Dongling Territory, Xiejin said calmly, with a confident tone. I should be able to see the world unify in my lifetime. Xian Yuanyao looked at him strangely. If the emperor didn't have the ambition to unify the world, would you die in peace? What did the general say? Xiejin pulled his hair. Except for Yao Yao, there is nothing in this world that can make me die in peace. As soon as he finished speaking, a high-pitched shout sounded outside, the emperor has arrived. The two of them paused and turned to look in the direction of the door. The emperor gets the news very quickly. $window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix.